Hi folks, it's Ivan here at Clarity. We're going to do a series of videos about how to write white papers. And before we get into it, let's kind of talk a little bit about the bigger picture as regards why you should write a white paper, how it benefits you, how it helps position your company, and how to dovetail it with other marketing efforts that you're doing. So the whole purpose of white papers is that it establishes your authority. It's a way to demonstrate you have expertise. And by doing so, you can build influence because the people that you're targeting towards usually are decision makers or people kind of higher up the food chain, so to speak, which ultimately leads then to sales. So the whole idea of white papers is that it's something that you would try to write, a portfolio of, not just one of, and then use that then as a way to market your products in a kind of soft sell approach. The people who read them tend to be those in a decision-making role. What you're trying to do is to help people who are in a hurry but need to get an understanding of something quite complex, maybe technical, and your aim then is to kind of to distill it into something that's relatively short, so they can make a decision or a recommendation based on that. Here's something interesting from a UK white paper where they're putting hashtags and their Twitter handles onto the front page of the white paper. So it goes to show you that it's not necessarily a very dry document. It's something that's very, it's been used now as part of social media campaigns too as well. For the most part, they tend to have either an executive summary or a foreword or a preface to put things in context, particularly say if they're over, say, 20 pages. This is an example from an Accenture white paper. You can see the snapshot, very clear, very easy to read. Let's take a look about how to write them very, very briefly. We'll have more videos about kind of more in-depth kind of tactics to write the white papers. But essentially, you're demonstrating your authority. You're trying to make it interesting for people, so you build credibility. And essentially, what you're trying to do is kind of work backwards. The people reading it have some kind of a problem, and you're trying to address that for them. And ultimately, you should be able to help them come to make some recommendation. What works really very well is to try to keep one idea per paragraph. And again, it's something we'll cover in more details in later videos. But the beauty of that then is that if you do that, it's easy for the reader to identify things in your document, because they're probably going to scan it rather than read it line by line by line. They may go back a second time. So keep that in mind. And if you look at this screenshot here, you can see what I'm talking about. The paragraphs are relatively short. They're using nice bullet points. You can get through it quite quickly. It's very, very easy. It's written in, even though it's a very technical financial paper here, it's written in everyday English, so to speak. And it's easy for you as the reader to pull things out. And again, the whole point is that you should try to orientate the reader first. Avoid any possible assumptions there may be, and try to answer things so that when the reader walks away, they can explain to themselves what you've written about in one sentence. In other words, you keep striving for clarity all the time. You keep striving to make things simpler to understand. Try to be specific, concrete. Use the active voice rather than the passive voice when writing. Again, we'll talk about that in more videos. But the active voice gives more energy to what you're writing. As regards the structure itself, initially, put things in context so they know where you're starting from. Define the scope, define what's in or what's out, and explain the approach you've used, particularly if it's a scientific or technical document, because that helps the reader understand why you've come to your recommendations. And the final thing is that the executive summary part of it should stand alone. In other words, what you put in the executive summary is independent of the main document. And again, I think there's other tutorials on the channel about how to write the executive summary. So this is a nice touch here from a UK white paper, where as you kind of work your way through it, they're highlighting where you are kind of in the roadmap of the white paper. It's nice visually, and it's not just eye candy. It demonstrates there's a pathway. They're taking you through the different kind of issues, and you're getting towards the finishing line. Very briefly, a few tips here is to try to the main thing is consider your readers. They're going to be a spectrum of different types. A lot of them will not be, say, native English readers. So avoid, jargon, avoid, wordplay and so on, all those kind of things. Strive for clarity, strive to make it easy to understand. And make sure you can stand over everything you say. So, if you're going to make claims, put in the references as endnotes in a document. And again, the whole idea of one idea per paragraph works very, very well, breaking things up with subheadings. And you can see the snapshot here. This is a Google white paper. It's only 8 pages. I've captured the first 6 here. The last 2 are just reference pages and so forth. But you can see very quickly that white papers don't necessarily need to be quite long. They've managed to distill the whole thing into 6 or 8 pages here, and it's that's all that's required, So again, as regards the language itself, don't try to be funny. Don't try to coin new words, buzz phrases, buzzwords, things like that. The main thing is connect the ideas. When we say put the bottom line at the start, what we mean is that as regards your conclusion should go at the start of the document. Don't make people work all the way through. Don't assume they'll work all the way through, and write to be scanned, for the simple reason that most white papers now end up on the internet. Search engines index them, so kind of write backwards and write to be digested or indexed by search engines. Again, we'll look at different ways to structure the white paper in terms of different writing techniques. But you need to, one recommendation before you write your white paper is to look at what your competitors are doing, compare what you're going to do against them, and try to raise the bar. And that really does work. If your white paper is part of, say, an effort to raise funds and so forth, try and think of your readers as potential investors. So you're writing from that angle. As you're writing, you kind of think, well, what would a potential investor look for in my business? And then write to kind of address those issues. A quick one here is that it's nice to balance the text to image ratio, but don't just put in images for the sake of eye candy. Make sure they have some real value. If you're going to cite references, put them in at the back of the document. And as regards the executive summary, really do put some effort into this, because if the executive summary is uninspiring and lacks energy, it's unlikely to go forward and read the rest of the document. And finally, there's a nice touch here in this. It's from, I believe, from SAS. And, in the conclusion section, they also put in a few things in the sidebar here to, a few quotes and recommendations and endorsements from customers. And it's done quite well, so think about that. As regards writing it, assume you're going to take at least 2, 3, maybe 4 different drafts to get it to completion. Aim towards, weaving facts into it. Make it remarkable in the sense that when people finish reading it, they can remark about it. They can kind of talk to their friends and say, you should read this, I'd recommend it. Write in waves. And then just don't leave it sitting there. Look to share and promote it on social media and so forth. So that's the bigger picture. Next week, we'll try to kind of drill down to different writing techniques to write the white paper. And then after that, we'll look at ways to promote it and to get more people to share it. So if you like that, please subscribe to the channel. A tweet or like would also be very, very much appreciated. See you soon, okay? Bye-bye.